Welcome. In this video, we're going to be doing a review of how to create an invoice in FunctionPoint. The process for creating an invoice can be started by hovering your cursor over the Invoices module, hovering over Add Invoice, which will show you a list of jobs you've looked at recently. If you see the job you're wanting to create an invoice for, select it. If you don't, you'll need to navigate to that job's details page. From the job's details page, you'll notice in the action buttons in the top right corner is an option to add invoice. Select Add Invoice, and that brings us to our invoice type selection. Here we can choose if we're needed to create a retainer invoice, an interim progress invoice, or a final invoice. Selecting final will automatically change the job status to invoiced and will close and archive the job. You can always open it back up again later, but if you need to keep it open for now, select interim. We can see a list of our previous invoices, some notes on the last timesheet or expenses entered against this job. We can select the tax group that's applicable. Now this may fill in automatically depending on how you've structured and set up your tax groups in your FunctionPoint system. Click Submit, and that brings us into the actual invoice creation. This provides us with an overview of the job scope of work structure, where we can see the service group, the description of the service group, and the individual services beneath that. For each service, we can then see the estimated dollar value, the actual dollar value, representing the billable value of time and expenses up until the date of the invoice, the variance between your estimated and your actual, how much we've invoiced the client previously, and the remainder owing. Remainder in this case is a comparison between our previously invoiced amount and either the estimated or the actuals, depending on how we choose for that to calculate. Filling in the amount that we intend to invoice is very simple. Click on the orange arrows in the estimated column header, and this populates the amount you intend to invoice with the value of the estimate. Click on the actual column, and it fills in the value of time and expenses. Click on the remainder column, and it fills in the value of the remainder. We can also put in a billing percentage. I could enter 50%, click on Estimate, and it automatically fills in with 50% of the value of my estimate. So we can use the column headers to automate the amount that we intend on creating an invoice for, but we can also just manually type them in. I could type in $300 for research, perhaps $425 for documentation, maybe an even $1,000 for sketching and roughs. Perhaps I don't want to build this large-scale item at all. Furthermore, if we have expenses against the job, we'll see those here as well. Notice my example of an external expense, in this case printing. We can see that there are values in the actual column. If there are values in the actuals column, it's letting you know that there is a purchase order and/or a vendor invoice entered against this job. Clicking on the arrow beside the expense will show us an overview of the details of the expense, including the description, the quantity, rate, discount, taxes, markup, and the post-markup billable value to the client. Now we can manually type in the amount that we intend to bill here. But we can also select this checkbox that says Invoice. Selecting this automatically applies this expense to the invoice that we're creating. This is especially handy if you have many expenses entered against this job. Select Preview. We will then see a total for our invoice. Select to create invoice. And this next page will allow us to update currency conversions, update existing descriptions, enter custom descriptions or payment notes that we want to show up on our invoice. Click Submit, and that's our invoice created. We are now looking at the invoice details page. Here we can see information such as the number, the date, and the type, the total due, amount paid, and the balance owing. This is where we can produce our client-facing version. Select the little print icon at the top right corner to produce a PDF that will of course have your company's logo and branding to it as opposed to ours. Keep in mind as well, the structure of the invoice produced out of your system may look very different from what you're seeing here, depending on the template and structure that you use. That concludes this video on creating invoices in FunctionPoint. Please continue checking out more videos for more helpful information on using FunctionPoint.